Most of the time, I think so. It's getting better. The AI is getting better, so it's harder to necessarily always catch it, but I have a good gut feeling sometimes about it.
I think I can. I feel pretty confident.
Usually, maybe not always, but usually.
For me, a big part of it is knowing my students and knowing what they write and looking for things that seem different from what I'm used to.
Things written by AI usually have a pretty standard structure.
The sentence structure is usually pretty flawless with a lot of AI.
Also, they don't have spelling or grammar errors.
I'm looking for flaws. And so, ironically, with the student's answer, it sounds more like their voice if it's less perfect.
Oh no, never.
No, which is frustrating because sometimes it flags it as AI, but it's not. And what I found is also sometimes, like if students use, say, Grammarly, it flags that as AI. And so they might have written it themselves, but they used Grammarly to check it. So that's where it becomes very, very tricky.
Here are your first two.
Okay, so one of these is AI and one is not. Okay. One very noticeable similarity between access real estate.
So is this student...
Is it student written or is it AI? You just have to tell me what you think.
Okay.
One of the things that I also notice, AI writing makes broad statements. Like it doesn't want to actually commit to a claim.
There's a lot of I found out. Now there's some things in here that are making me think it's trying to trick me. Really cool facts. Like that sounds like something a high school would say, but it also kind of sounds cheesy, like something AI would try to say to sound like a high schooler.
Like you just said, you can write it like a high school kid, and then it doesn't actually then meet the traps that I would look for, right? Which is a high level, a word choice that isn't appropriate. So yeah, I mean, that read like a high school kid would write in my brain, but the AI can do that, right? And I would have no understanding that that was even possible.
The student had some verb tense changes in their writing. AI would not do that.
You know, a kid can put it in through like, get punctuation or grammar checked. And so it's not things I would normally check, like if they were writing it by hand, like verb tense.
Some of the words like influencers showcasing, like I would struggle to think that a student would use that vocabulary. I'm gonna say this one's AI.
Protagonist T's actions can be seen as an attempt to free Mr. Thomas from his materialistic tendencies. I mean, if a student was talking to me like that, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? That doesn't seem right.
It's actually student written.
Okay, I'm wrong.
I think it's unfair. English teachers kind of have a little bit more of an advantage than some teachers, just because that's what we do.
It just sounds like a kid. So it sounds like a kid.
AI.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Yeah, so, I mean, just the first thing that might tip me off if this is AI would be some of the expressive language, symbolically liberating him, right? Like, I don't know too many, even in my AP US history classes, I don't know too many kids that would just come up with that on their own.
The quotes are not cited. That's another key factor.
2/3 of the way through this, I was pretty convinced it was student written, and then it hit me with this mindset leads to a culture of disposability, contributing to environmental degradation and social inequality. And then I start to question it.
Yep.
I'm gonna say this was at least aided with AI.
That one is AI.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going kid.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great. I got one.
Yeah, I feel it's about right, and I'm about 75% of the time. I feel pretty confident about finding the things that are like student voiced correctly. I've read a lot of teenager writing for a long time, and it's kind of just like a tone and a pattern that's come to be expected.
It makes you feel better. It's English and not science.
It's English and not science. If it had been science,
Yeah,
I'd have
you
been
would've
fine. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
the mistakes. I mean, like, as we train kids to be good writers, like, we train them not to make those mistakes or to be able to see them and proofread and take out the mistakes. And so that's like one of the things about learning is like, we want you to get good at this. So obviously if there's mistakes.
Again, for me, it's the language that I know that we use regularly in biology. When I see certain words, I know, okay, that doesn't sound like something like a conversation we've had or something that we've talked about.
Voice on the first three comparisons, the voice was very computery, and so humans write with emotion usually, even if it's something kind of like a research paper, expository, like we say, use strong language like must and should and like have an opinion. And so we want to know that kids have an opinion and we want to see it in their writing, and a computer doesn't have an opinion. So.
The purpose of education is to have students demonstrate their knowledge over what's being taught. And so now with the technological advances of so many different programs, it really creates a lot of shortcuts for students that we never experienced in the past.
The most frustrating thing, and I've talked with this with my colleagues a lot, is that the shift away from the value of learning into the value of achievement. And students don't find value in the thing that we're spending all of our time creating. And they just want to get the grade or the result or whatever, and that they just bypass the process and the beauty of our job and the beauty of our education, the beauty of learning is the process that we go through to get to the end. And our world is so full of shortcuts that it makes me sad that students don't find that value anymore as much. I'm not gonna say ever. It's kind of like in Candyland where you can always take the shortcuts and you finish the game in 3 turns. And I'm like, but then you don't play the game. Like the whole point is to do the thing and to sometimes have setbacks and to sometimes be able to move ahead. And so it's like that, we're too hurried. And so that's really kind of a sad part, I think, about it.
Well, I think it's caused us to change the way that we do things, and as teachers we refine the things that we do that we know work well to help students learn over lots of years. And so when something new like AI comes about, a lot of those things don't work anymore.
You know, we want our students to learn how to write effectively and think critically. And if you're just using AI to plug in a prompt, you're not doing the thinking, you're not doing the learning, and that's been really frustrating.
I think what's challenging to me is my role as a librarian. Like, the number one thing that kids need to learn from me is to think for themselves. So if you're asking a computer to think for you, that is like the entire antithesis of what my training as an educator is to teach. So like, the use of AI can be good for certain scenarios. I am not anti-AI by any means. What I am is anti having AI think for you. I am also kind of, on the path of the thing that I see going away from students is creativity. So the more things you look up online, which I have a master's degree in looking stuff up online, like the more things you look online, the more ideas you get from elsewhere and you don't just come up with them yourself, the more your creativity dies. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot over the last couple of years, is that people can just go like Google ideas for whatever, ideas for catapults, ideas for, photography, ideas for whatever, and then they're just doing what somebody else did. They're not actually like creating their own stuff.
I think that what's really, really challenging for me is that I have to shift my paradigm, because when I was young, there was a lot of things in science that we had to know, and now it's just really available at the click of a button.
Well, I mean, I think, two things. One, so I've had to, instead of moving to AI, right, I've stayed paper written. But the problem is all the tests, my AP exams are all going digital. So I have to, at the same time that I need to get the kids to be able to write it, think and then write, the test going digital means that I also have to get the kids to type it and learn how to use the computer appropriately, right, for the technology. So I'm kind of in that middle. I'm just sort of right now trying to figure that out.
It just shifts a lot of what we're supposed to be doing in education, and I really don't feel like I'm entirely on board, because the ship has just shifted. It's such an inertial and I'm still kind of headed in this older school. Yeah.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword in the sense that it makes us change the things that we know have worked in the past, but it also causes us to try new things and teach and think about our teaching in new and creative ways, which I think could be a good thing. I've been tried to be really specific about the way that I assign things in class now. I'm doing a lot more in-class writing, a lot more paper pencil work, which I think is good practice anyway.
A lot of my classes are portfolio based, which is them talking about their learning. And it's really hard for them to have AI write about something specific they did in my class and what they learned from it. So
ultimately, it's only hurting you at the end because you're just not getting anything out of that experience. The reason that we write, the reason that we read is to develop our brains and to make us somebody that's going to be a professional in the future that can think for themselves and utilize critical thinking and communication skills. And so if you're just pushing a button to have AI spit out whatever they think, whatever it thinks, it's really not doing you any good.
Problem solving, like life skills. When life throws something at you, you can't plug that into a computer and get an answer out that tells you what to do.
Because we want to be able to think for ourselves. It's not necessarily that the topic that you're studying in biology or zoology is going to be something that you need to know in order to be successful in life, but it's about the process of learning about how to learn.
You know, there's a lot of reasons. I think at the end of the day, I'm in my late 30s now, and the only person that I know I can really trust is myself. Time and time again, when I choose to show up, even with my flaws, and do things even imperfectly or whatever it is, if it's still my work, I trust myself more. And as I approach the uncertainty of life, that trust over time has compounded to feel like a really important aspect of my experience of being alive.